Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a great pleasure to welcome our panelists today to this webinar and conversation on the Workforce Almanac. Krizia Lopez, she's the innovation lead at the St. Louis City Hall. Randy Solis is the Workforce Development Officer at the City of Riverside in California. Kate Naranjo is the Solution Development Director at Year Up United. And James Cryan is the founder and CEO of Willow Education. Before I give them the microphone and the stage, which is the goal of today, to highlight how they have been using the Workforce Almanac, how it's been helpful for them, how they integrated the Workforce Almanac data with additional data that they have access to solve like real practice and policy problems. I just want to give everyone a quick intro on the Workforce Almanac itself, if it's new for you, but it's as I said before, a policy and practice oriented product that is currently in its second version, but since the beginning has had this goal of mapping the landscape of workforce training in the US. We currently have over 20,000 short-term training providers mapped in the Workforce Almanac, including their names, their very precise locations, their types. And for a portion of them, we also integrated information like employer identification numbers, like finances, revenue, and expense information whenever those data points were available in publicly available data sources. So the ultimate goal of the Almanac is to facilitate data integration across different platforms and empower policymakers, training providers, and intermediaries to better identify workforce training gaps and hopefully design better pathways with this information. And one of our greatest accomplishments and joys so far since we launched the Almanac in November 2023 and now through the second release of the Almanac has truly been to learn from practitioners and leaders in the field about how they are using the Workforce Almanac. And today, the organizations represented by Krizia, by Randy, by James and Kate, they have been responsible for putting the Almanac into action and using this tool and this resource to map local and regional training ecosystems, to guide workforce training geographic expansion, and to connect learners to opportunity, which is something that makes us really, really proud. Krizia and Kate and Randy, they will always speak more about their use cases. But again, I just wanted to start by contextualizing a little bit about the use case. So the 4 use cases we discussed today. So Krizia, we speak about how the St. Louis City Hall used the Workforce Almanac as a foundation data set for a database that she created in St. Louis, specifically in its metro regions, mapping their workforce development landscape. And she'll explain more about how they did that with the Workforce Almanac. Kate will tell more about how Year Up United has used the Workforce Almanac in each of the 9 market studies that they have completed since the Almanac launch in November 2023 in cities that range from New York City to Pittsburgh and Dallas. Randy will share with us how the city of Riverside in California used the Workforce Almanac to create an internal tool that aggregates K-12 and additional training providers to build a picture of the city's talent training edge to attract investments for the city. And last but not least, James will share how Willow Education, which is a career exploration curriculum and platform designed to guide young people toward post-secondary pathways, use the Workforce Almanac to help Persist Nashville, a nonprofit supporting first-generation college-going students in Nashville, Tennessee, to map out non-college post-secondary training providers in their community. Again, thank you everyone for being here with us today. And Krizia, I would love to kick off the conversation with you. Can you share more about can you share a little bit more about the labor market context in St. Louis and the challenges that you were facing back in 2024 when you had the idea of using the Workforce Almanac there?
Yes, absolutely. So in St. Louis City Hall, so I'm here through the Bloomberg Harvard Fellowship Program It's a 2-year program, and I'm based in the mayor's office here. And one of the things we've been facing in St. Louis has been population decline. So for a long time, St. Louis has, it's a shrinking city. So that has led to a lot of workforce challenges for us. And it's at some point, just in my role, which is kind of to do strategic innovation projects, I remember thinking at some point we really needed to upgrade our approach to understanding how we might turn around that population loss trend. Additionally, in the workforce sector, right, you can imagine, there was a lot of discussion about things like how do we attract businesses? How do we anchor the population? How do we perhaps rebuild some of the infrastructure that has, diminished over time in the city? And it turns out that to do all those things, you're going to need workers. And so for us, it was really important to use the Workforce Almanac to be able to map out some of how we'll approach fostering growth in some of the industries that we are going to depend on in order to rebuild our city. I should also add that this year we were hit by an EF3 tornado, and the city suffered a lot of damage. But once again, it was another kind of demonstration of, hey, the actual cap for us to be able to rebuild those buildings that were damaged is our workforce, right? We need skilled workers in the trades, in other sectors. And so when we launched our database project, I remember from being working previously with Nathalie in the project on workforce about the almanac. I actually had an intern, Lindsay Bernard. She's a Harvard College student. And I had another intern, Claire Miller. So we all worked on this throughout 2 years, I guess, they handed each other off. But we started mapping out every single possible workforce training provider in the St. Louis region. And our city is interesting because we're at the border of Illinois and Missouri. We are actually an independent city that's independent from the county surrounding us. And we have 88 municipalities surrounding us. So it's a lot of silos. In workforce, we always talk about silos. But I will say this, once we mapped it out using the almanac, we were able to do some kind of analyses, and we concluded things like the fact that 30% of the programs were in the Illinois side, and 72% were in the Missouri side, and that was important because we tended to think of everything as like, what's in our city borders, and it was like, it was a way to expand out and say, no, this is actually a regional thing. We need to start partnering with universities across state lines. We also did a summary of the industries that we could find, and we realized that, for example, healthcare among our programs, healthcare was represented like 17% of the different programs we had available, followed by construction and trades, and then software. But we did find that among the industries that we kind of were growing, there was a lot of talk about growth industries in our region. People might have heard that St. Louis, for example, received the latest Boeing contract to build the F-47 jets. And so there's another project right there where we're like, that's a highly specialized workforce. It's a skilled workforce, but it's really not healthcare or a little bit of trades, but it's kind of like some indications that we might need to pivot and be proactive with at the same time that some of these contracts were being planned. In order for us to plan proactively for that, we need to incorporate workforce planning. So that's how we've been using it in St. Louis. We're partnering here. This is really a cross agency effort. So we've been partnering, for example, Mayor's Office with our SLATE is what we call it. It's our training agency for the city, and also our Workforce Development Board. We also partner with our SLDC, which is our economic development team, as well as other nonprofits, universities, and colleges in the area. So that other aspect was really helpful. The Almanac was a way to show the breadth of all the different types of institutions that contribute to the workforce landscape.
Thank you so much, Krizia. And something like in what you said, and just speaking, if you can you share a little bit more about how you moved from learning about the training providers to try and match the programmatic provision? So you said there was like a huge demand in specific industries like construction and others. So how did you go about looking at those dots in the almanac, the training providers, and uncovering more information about their training programs?
Yeah, so we actually, so we use it as a starting point, right? And we also decided to actually call a bunch of the organizations and kind of sample just to make sure that we had up-to-date information. We found, it was pretty up-to-date, which was great. And so what we're using this for now is to build out a strategy. So there's two different things we're using it for. One is, so Slate, our training agency, we've all been trying to stand up some apprenticeship programs. And so there's a lot of focus on that. There's a lot of kind of talk about apprenticeships right now. And it's been really helpful for us to identify some exact partners that we could start doing things with. So for example, we used the Almanac to identify, for example, like a cluster in the biosciences industry that we used to then, we kind of contacted a bunch of organizations that we were able to then kind of submit like a regional application for the U.S. Economic Development Agency that was kind of having a grant. So there's a lot of tangible ways in which we've been able to then just identify clusters and kind of organizations that we maybe were not on our radar. So part of the project has been, we're using it in that way. Another way is using it to inform a little bit of how we talk with like business attraction and developing some kind of industrial zones in our city. So for example, in the previous years, we were part of something called the Good Jobs, Great Cities initiative with the Department of Labor. And we used this database and this whole study to inform our work with the Department of Labor. So we were able to, when we were deciding whether or not to invest, I think it was like a $60 million plus project to build out a workforce infrastructure and hub and a training, an actual building where we could host apprentice programs and kind of like custom manufacturing facilities for the purpose of training. So we were able to use this database to build that business case and then also to show what partners would be like realistic, the right size and kind of maturity. We were able to make sure we have a diverse representation of partners from not just like, traditional training programs hosted by educational institutions, but also there's a lot of nonprofits doing their own thing. There's a lot of, for-profit businesses that are hosting their own trainings. So that was another way that we used it. And finally, I'll say this, it's been a really great tool, just laying it out. And especially the visual has been a great way to show, stakeholders across the region that, a lot of people often think like, City Hall, you guys are in tune with a lot of things, or they think, we're in tune because we're the workforce board. And, everybody thinks that they're aware of all the activity. However, once you map it out, it's clear that like no one person or organization can really like understand and conceptualize the complexity of a workforce ecosystem. So by visually laying it out in a map, it was just a helpful way to even just build coalitions and buy-in regionally to just say, hey, this is a real thing. We are not in tune with every single organization. We need to be more coordinated. Let's, put that on a map and show to everybody that, there is opportunity to be more efficient, to be more collaborative. That's been a big win as well.
Thank you so much for sharing, Krizia. As I was listening to you, I was also reminding myself of the parallels between St. Louis and Riverside. Randy, I know these approach to workforce development, among other things, as an asset to help attract businesses. I know this is also common in Riverside about how you use the Almanac I also know that we're trying to create a very expensive database and data tool to map the sector, and actually that we even expanded beyond the Almanac, training providers to add some K-12 partners and training providers as well, and education institutions. So I also know, Randy, that, and it's maybe like helpful to share with everyone here that we met in a very special occasion, like as part of the Workforce Almanac beta version roadshow. Like we met in a workshop in San Antonio, Texas. Something brought you to that event as you were stepping into your current role as a workforce development officer in the city. And can you share a little bit more about, as you were starting in your new role, what caught your attention about the Almanac, and what was specifically the challenge in front of you in Riverside, and how the Almanac could be helpful for you there?
No, absolutely. What's the phrase? Faking it till you make it, right? Yeah, we met at a conference. It was actually the National Association of Workforce Development Professionals. And really, I was 2 months into my journey to becoming the Workforce Development Officer. I have over 25 years of experience in city government. And a lot of my work really, as I have found, was tied to workforce. But, I'm a student of my craft, and I was there at the conference to learn as much as I could, to talk to as many people as possible. And when I saw the description of your presentation, I was really intrigued by it, because one of the first things I observed in Riverside was a need to identify, who are the players in workforce. Again, I mentioned 25 years within a city and municipal agency, but I only knew of a handful of entities that was offering this. So I was really intrigued to see a map that will kind of pinpoint what is out there, who is doing it, and then immediately making contact with those entities to get additional information and collect data, because really everything we do this day and age is data driven. So it's super important to be able to quantify and also provide metrics that are relevant to those entities that are providing the services that are in this region. So that was really my why, why I was there at the conference itself. And really every day I continue to learn something new. And I happen to learn of new entities, some that are on the Almanac, some that are not. So I think part of this too is, this Almanac is a living document, a living entity that will continue to grow and expand. And through efforts like this, it'll continue to accomplish that, I believe.
Randy, would you mind sharing the map that you created for Riverside? And if you can you share more about, as you said, and as Krizia said as well, the Almanac is meant and can be helpful really as a starting point that more thoroughly covers training providers, but that doesn't exhaust all the landscape. So can you share the map if you can,
Yes.
and tell us more about the additional data sources that you use to build this map and why?
Happy to do it. So let me start off by let me preface this with I am not a GIS expert. I am not super technical. So if I can do it, anybody in the room can do it. But what I'm displaying right now was really the initial version of what I encountered when this almanac was brought forth. So, this was a very impressive, 50,000 foot view of workforce in the country. So as I was exploring it, as I wanted to try to hyper focus on the city of Riverside, I noticed that the almanac had these filters up on top of the website. So I was playing around. I entered our state, our county, metro area, and what I got was what you see now on the screen. This is a filtered out version of the workforce ecosystem, is what we call it as well, in the county of Riverside. So again, I am the workforce development officer for the city of Riverside. So not that the county data isn't important to me, but my job is to hyper focus on city of Riverside. So my initial outreach was, are there additional filters? Can I add Riverside? Is there a filter that would just give me specific, like, information specific to Riverside so I can easily find it and access it without, obviously just zooming in. So there wasn't like a button that I could click and have it all done for me. So, what I did is I talked to our city's GIS team, And I learned a lot about GIS in a very short period of time. But what I learned in particular was metadata and really just the geospatial data that's out there that helps you pinpoint. So what we did essentially is we downloaded all of the data and we put some filters in there and we cut everybody out of the out but the city of Riverside and then really our surrounding region. And we kept our region included because as far as we're concerned, all of those entities are feeders into jobs here within the city of Riverside. Now, I'll also share that my position initially started in human resources, but it now lives in community and economic development. So this really ties into what Krizia was saying too. Um, so my initial focus was building programs, designing services that help our job seekers and those who are maybe looking to upskill or retrain for a new career. When I moved to community and economic development, what lens was added was the economic development potential and value. So not only do we want to service those job seekers and our immediate community, but we want to attract businesses and let them know that we do have a robust ecosystem of workforce. So one of the first layers that we were able to add to my map, and you'll kind of see it morph as I click on some filters. Now the purple and blue data points that you see on the map, this is actually information directly from the Workforce Almanac. So that previous page that I shared, this is that data as a layer on a map now of the city of Riverside. So then one other layer, and this came from a variety of sources, but the city has a few internal data layers. So for those of us that work in municipal agency, our elected officials, it's very important for them to know what's happening in or out of their wards or their zones. So we added a ward map. So you can see the ward map populate on our map here. I'll zoom out a little bit. Now this shows from the Workforce Almanac what workforce entities exist not only in the city limit and its surrounding region, but within specific wards. So this is going to be very important for us, especially when we present to council and we, share information about the city's workforce ecosystem. There were some also really great data that we were able to download from the U.S. Census. So you now see the shaded colors. This actually identifies populations within regions. So if you click on the map itself, you'll see kind of a breakdown distribution by age group, gender, just a lot of really good information. So we wanted to include this as a data point in our map as well for those that are coming to visit, just to learn about the immediate and surrounding area. What we then did is, our high schools, like many, they have CTE programs, pretty robust programs. So what are those schools within our district? Um, and the red outline you see are actually our school districts that service. There's actually two within the city of Riverside. We then populated the schools themselves, and I know that the dots are a bit small, but this identifies all high schools, elementary schools, and middle schools within the city of Riverside. And we included that information because we wanted to show and demonstrate that there's a pathway and a robust number of schools within the city that are feeding into the various jobs that we're looking to attract. Now, like many entities, we are actually in the beginning phases of updating our general plan. And in our general plan, we've identified, we're calling them 5 areas of excellence. We've done data to forecast which jobs are coming in and in which sectors. So there's definitely an emphasis on those areas of excellence as well. But again, this kind of captures K through 12 now, the workforce entities from the Almanac, and then we also have additional layers that include our local universities and colleges. And then in addition, we thought about our businesses. When they are considering moving to a city, many have families, right? So they want to know what childcare is available, so we kind of forecasted and thought about this, and this continues to morph, and we haven't released it yet, but we are continuing to, solicit feedback on additional information that could be helpful. But at the end of the day, this will be published on our community economic development website, and it'll be a tool used not only for businesses to explore the ecosystem itself, but for those job seekers and those entities that are looking to see what options are out there. I think what I've learned in the short time that I've been the workforce development officer is that there's a lot of great things happening in the workforce space, but they seem to be the best kept secret. I heard the word silos earlier. Yeah, absolutely. As an outsider kind of looking in, I encountered the silo effect, but we're trying to break down those barriers and figure out how we can leverage all the resources, because ultimately at the end of the day, we want to maximize the opportunities.
Thank you so much, Randy, and thank you for previewing the Workforce Development Agency resource map. It's a pleasure that this is the first time like we're showing it publicly, and I'm sure it will inspire other people. And if you want to continue the conversation with Randy, please jump into the LinkedIn post that I think my colleague shared in the chat. It's a great way to interact and learn from panelists, including Randy. So thank you for sharing. And then Kate, Randy he just like said a word that really almost like defines Year Up United to me, which is connecting talent to opportunity. And I know like probably everyone or almost everyone in the audience here has heard of and admires the work that you all do at Year Up United, doing exactly that, connecting talent to opportunity. And I also know that part of the impact that you create comes from the very careful and thoughtful approach you have when you are considering which places, which communities you are entering and why, and you're deciding to serve and why. I would love if you could walk us a little bit through the process that you go through when we're evaluating new markets. And if you can share what are some of the factors that play into this decision-making and the main data that you use for that.
Yeah, thanks so much for your kind words about Year Up United. We're really proud of what we do here. So we're a national workforce development organization. We serve about 250 corporate partners, including many in the Fortune 500 across 20 cities. And we've been around for 25 years. It's a mouthful. But one of the things that I think we don't have, as Randy and Krizia both walked us through, is the intimate local knowledge of every workforce ecosystem, right? We are a national organization, and we're really grateful that folks often ask us to pursue new opportunities, whether that's a corporate partner asking us to expand to a new city with them, or a new training track, right, for our young adults. And what we need to figure out is this particular opportunity going to help us serve our mission, which is to close the opportunity divide, particularly between young adults 18 to 29 who don't hold a college degree, and the incredible corporate opportunities that could be open to them if they were just given a chance. So, we look at these opportunities and we say, is this a good one? And a few years ago, our colleagues figured out we need to have a way to do that, right? Some sort of process that we put vetting those opportunities through. One of the processes that we use is called a market study, as you referenced. So the market study takes job data from the BLS, census data about a population, Lightcast data, the sort of most up-to-date opportunity on what's going on with jobs, and then the Workforce Almanac data to say what other training providers are in that ecosystem. We look at all of that and we say, based on this quantitative data, what are the opportunities that we might see in this ecosystem, and what are the gaps? Because every ecosystem has gaps and every ecosystem has strengths. So using that data, we then go and have conversations with folks to say, what's going on in your community, particularly focused on what does opportunity look like for the young people that Year Up United seeks to serve. Are there lots of opportunities? Does it feel like there's not a lot of opportunities? And I think those conversations combined with that quantitative data can really help us understand, is Year Up United best positioned to solve some of the challenges that particular ecosystem is facing? Or is it, maybe another workforce development organization, or should we pursue something in partnership? I think it all helps us sort of build a case to figure out what we should do next and what opportunities we're best positioned for. And, we've found both options. We found both in places that Year Up United should continue to sort of grow and evolve, and that Year Up United is not always the best solution. So I think that ability both to say yes and to say no using data from the Workforce Almanac is incredibly important.
That's fascinating. I love that you said that because it can, help test and validate hypotheses about also when it's not best position, and that's really crucial. Kate, I know we've talked about one specific market study that you conducted in New York City. It's such a huge and complex ecosystem. Would you mind sharing a little bit more about that market study, specifically how you used the Almanac and how that aligned with the Europe United offerings?
Yeah, of course. This is hot off the presses. We have been vetting this over the last few months. So New York City and the New York metro area is one of our largest markets. We serve hundreds of students every year, and we don't expect that to change, right? We are deeply committed to the region. But we did want to start to think about sort of what's next for New York, and where are the opportunities for us to continue to build that opportunity for young people. And there's a little bit of like, should we be serving more students through Europe's signature model? Are there other models we might want to bring? And I just checked this morning. There are over 900 training providers in the New York City metro area. It's a lot. It's more than any other region that I personally have pulled data for. And I think that presents a real opportunity for us to think about where can we add value. So I'll back up a minute and say Europe has been developing a set of new products and offerings over the last few years. And one of those products is Career Labs, which I've seen in action here in Oakland, California. It's an incredibly powerful train the facilitator model where we take Europe's highly vetted curriculum that has taught soft skills, human skills, pick your durable skills, pick your catchphrase of the moment, to young people through 40 lessons that training providers can pick and choose which ones they want. So, it's a really powerful tool for organizations that are looking to beef up that particular skill set of theirs. Maybe they're an incredible program in the trades. Maybe they're an apprenticeship program. Maybe they are serving a particularly hard to serve population and so are more focused on basic needs. What we really sought to create was a plug and play solution that lets folks be able to implement soft skills training tomorrow. And I've been in workforce long enough to see the pendulum swing both ways. So, we saw the pendulum swing towards technical skills and now we're back at soft skills. So we think it's a really ripe moment. So we think, to bring it back to New York City, we saw an opportunity to say, how might we think about an ecosystem approach to helping more organizations use this Career Labs curriculum given the crowded marketplace? And I think that's one of the things that our new regional market leader, Annie Martinez, is starting to vet and have conversations about with the many, many intermediaries and workforce training organizations that exist in the region, so that we can really be additive and continue to grow our impact there.
Thank you, Kate. That's fascinating. Thank you for sharing. James, can we go to you? Just sharing again about Willow Education. It's an AI native career exploration curriculum and platform designed to guide young people toward purposeful post-secondary pathways. And I know you take like the post-secondary term like really broadly. And I know also, James, that you use the Workforce Almanac data specifically in a challenge faced by Persist Nashville. Can you share some more context on this specific challenge in Nashville, Tennessee, and how you approached it with Persist?
Yeah, absolutely. Real pleasure to be here. So thank you, Nathalie.
Thank you.
Maybe it's helpful a little bit to give a little bit of my background and how I'm newer to Workforce. And so therefore very grateful to the Almanac and other good, smart, thoughtful leaders who are illuminating the different pathways and opportunities for young people. I was in K-12 education for my entire career coming into this work. And I both was a teacher, and then I started and led a charter school network called Rocky Mountain Prep in Colorado. Today we have 12 schools, 5,000 students. And what I noticed in that experience was that too many young people were struggling to go from K-12, even high-performing students from K-12 into a strong quality first job through higher education or workforce programs. And so what that looked like in Colorado, and I pick on one institution here, but it's not because of that institution, it's because every city has this. In Colorado, the majority of students who graduate and go on to college are first in their families to do so in Denver. And in Denver public schools, including high performing charters like Rocky Mountain Prep and DSST and KIPP and others, the vast majority of students would go to this institution called Metro State University. And any guesses what the on-time graduation rate for a student at Metro is for a first-gen college-going student? I welcome anyone in the chat to throw that. I don't think we have the chat open. Sadly, it's 9%, and only 24% will graduate ever from Metro State University. And again, I don't pick on Metro. There are a lot of good people there trying to strengthen those results. And I was looking at this from the K-12 perspective, saying, why on earth would we ever let one of our first-gen students go to Metro State, where the vast majority of the time they're not going to go on and earn a degree? And we know from good data from the New York Fed, and then from a smaller study that the Charter School Growth Fund did with Bain and Company, that the worst outcome for young adults is to try to go to college and not complete and therefore take on debt, but have no more earning impact in their market or in their lives. And so I was looking at that, and when you're done being mad at Metro, there's this like really important question that pops up. Okay, so where should students go if they want to connect to high quality lives that are going to lead to thriving wages in their careers, where they can support a family, especially in expensive markets like Denver or New York or Nashville, when they haven't had that, when their families haven't gone through that, and so they don't have generational wealth. And we know that 40% of students don't go into college after leaving high school. And then for low-income students, about half that do go to college won't finish. And so we need to help illuminate what are other opportunities for young people to connect to good jobs. And so Persist Nashville is this awesome little nonprofit. Sorry, they're not little, they're big. This awesome nonprofit in Nashville. They support first-gen students exclusively, and they help them enroll in college, and then they help them persist through college. And they were looking at that experience and noticing that despite having great outcomes, where almost 0.25% would enroll or persist, they were 1/4 more likely to enroll if they worked with Persist, and 18% more likely to persist from their first year to their second year. Despite those great outcomes, they were seeing students enroll in programs that weren't delivering good economic value for them, or they weren't really sure, the students, of like why they were enrolling in them. And they were looking for like faster pathways to economic mobility into jobs, not just four-year degrees. And so the way we use the Workforce Almanac, when Persist said, hey, we want some help with this, you all are the only people out there that are looking at college programs side by side with workforce programs and helping schools and nonprofits navigate those. Can you come in and help? So we started by looking at the Workforce Almanac, which was much cleaner and more effective than looking at the WIOA data set that I'm sure many of us are familiar with. And we use that data set to say, like, okay, here's our starting place. And we then looked at, okay, are 18 to 22-year-olds eligible for these programs? And then are they aligned to some of the most in-demand, high-quality jobs that people without a degree can access in Nashville? And so those were our two first filters. And then we took that data set and we did similar process to what I heard Krizia, you mentioned, and also Kate. We looked at what are other data sets and that we can use to inform this. And then we just started interviewing programs that the local funders or the workforce leaders in Nashville thought were the strongest ones. Because we didn't see our job as having a comprehensive set of opportunities and programs. Every program that was out there, we see our job as trying to surface the most relevant and the highest quality ones for young people that are most likely to lead to economic mobility. So yeah, let me pause there. That was kind of a mouthful.
No, that was great. I would love to hear about the results. So I think you mentioned in passing that, it was relatively easier to integrate the Workforce Almanac into your thinking, James, but now that you integrated it, what have been the results? Like, what did you learn? What did you manage to uncover about these, really broad approach to post-secondary pathways, which is, by the way, our approach. We have higher education data from iPads in our data, and data about real eligible providers. So the Workforce Almanac and we as a whole, as much as you, like we take these both end approach. So when you integrated this data, like what happened to the insights that we couldn't cover with Persist Nashville specifically?
Yeah, maybe if I could, I'll tell a student story, and then can broaden it to what we're seeing across the board. We had, and this is actually a story from Denver. So we had this kid in Denver who was going to DSST public schools, one of our longest and early partners, really strong charter school network in Colorado. And DSST is like an old school college for all network. And they want all of their students to apply and get into a college program and then make a decision after that, whether they go to college or they choose to do something differently. Alfonso would run the other way when the college counselor came looking for him. He's like, look, I am not going to college. I don't love school. I have an IEP. I don't feel successful in school. And more importantly than all of that, I have to support my mom and my little sister. And so every day after school, I work at Wendy's. I work at Wendy's on the weekend. And you know what my post-secondary graduation plan is? It's to work at Wendy's and pick up more hours. So Alfonso was a graduating senior. He had a plan. He was set. One day, Charles, the counselor, catches him and says, hey, we're doing this pilot work with Willow. Would you be interested in learning a little bit more about it? Part of it is exploring high quality alternatives to college, which we call professional programs. And he said, fine. He wasn't that enthusiastic, but sure, why not? And so they looked at our platform and they explored different opportunities. He took our assessment and learned what some of his strengths were. And he said, you know what, actually this like pre-apprenticeship program at Cross Purpose, where we learn skill trades like electrician, advanced manufacturing, that seems pretty interesting. Can we go check it out? And so Charles, the counselor, said, sure. And so Alfonso, Charles, and his mom went down, and I'm pretty sure did the first ever college visit of Cross Purpose, which is a workforce program. And they checked it out and it was amazing. They were super excited. Fast forward 6 months later, so he decides to go to Cross Purpose, and then we hadn't heard from him a while, and I always get nervous when we don't hear from students, so I was bugging the counselor and saying, hey, like what's going on with Alfonso? He should be finishing up his program soon. Have you heard from him? And he said, no, I really haven't heard from him. You know, I keep texting him, but I haven't heard back. And finally Alfonso texts back and he says, I'm so sorry. I've been too busy with interviews and job opportunities. Like I didn't know which one to take. And what he ended up doing was doing the advanced manufacturing pre-apprenticeship program with Cross Purpose, this amazing workforce nonprofit that is not on enough people's radar for the results that they're getting. To Randy's point, like the best kept secrets in the silos. And he ended up taking a job as an advanced manufacturing apprentice at a elevator manufacturing company in Denver. And he's making close to $50K as an apprentice. And 3 years from now, they cannot hire enough people at $92,000 starting salary. And so he's on a totally different trajectory because the workforce programs that traditionally are not on anyone's college counseling or counselor's dashboard because the data sets don't exist in a way that's useful or workable enough. Because of that work and because of the work that you all are leading, my hope is that more and more navigators can support students like Charles who think they have a plan because they don't see themselves in college at finding a better plan.
Thank you so much, James. I think it's going back to the stories is really what keeps us moving, and like hearing that these data in this tool like goes from the the decision makers and the educators and the navigators like to changing students and workers' lives is really what matters in the end, right? To wrap up the conversation today, because I know we are almost at time. I would love to go around the room and ask each of you, very quick question. If you can respond in some like 30 seconds, 1 minute, that would be great. But you pick the question. I have an either or option here. Can you share what's one feature of the Workforce Almanac data or of the Workforce Almanac approach, to serving that you wish you see more out there? You can either pick these, or how would you improve the Workforce Almanac, or how can we improve the Workforce Almanac? So, Krizia, can we start from you and go to Randy and Kate and James?
Okay, so first question, or I guess, how can we improve the almanac? I think it would be super cool to be able to see almost like, I mean, this is like many years from now, but some kind of like historical snapshot or something of just how things are evolving. I mean, it's something I try to track here. And I would say, yeah, I mean, we're always trying to shift from reactive to proactive planning, right? So that's why, seeing historical trends might be a way to at least start thinking that way a little bit. I know it's kind of backwards, but that's something I think would be helpful. It's just, yeah, greater ability for proactive planning.
And for me, I'll answer the feature that I like the most and that I would maybe like to see improved would be the ability to click on the entity itself and get like website information. We had to do a lot of kind of digging, which is fine, but if you could easily click on the actual entity that is identified on the map and be able to access their website, I think it could help people navigate to those particular entities a lot quicker. So I would like to see that.
I think from the approach standpoint, a lot of us today talked about the importance of collaboration and sort of open-minded thinking. James's story about how we think beyond just college for all, Krizia and Randy about how we think about an ecosystem. I think my hope for folks who use the Almanac is that we start to move past the sort of scarcity deficit-based mindset that a lot of us have held about workforce, towards this sort of like, wow, there is a lot of great stuff going on. And we really want to make sure that every student has the best opportunity that they can possibly have. And there are many of us trying to do this work. And so we should all play the part that we're best positioned to do.
I like those, and I'm pretty sure the 30 seconds cap was coaching for me, so I'll heed that. For me, higher education pays off for learners about 2/3 of the time, and WIOA funded workforce is net neutral. And so I think it's really important in both to bring a quality lens as we're navigating for students around what's most likely to pay off. Because if someone invests time and their hard-earned time and money into an educational program, whether it be workforce or higher education, they're hoping it's going to pay off. And so for me, data around quality signals, so completion rates, average salary on the other end of programs, and that's challenging to do, especially in this space, but I think it's a really important thing to work towards.
And I fully agree with you all, and I know our team as well. Really appreciative of your thoughtful perspectives and of your courage, like to test and use the Almanac, even with its like limitations and imperfections, like to try new things and to expand perspectives around this really broad ecosystem of workforce training. We would love to continue learning with all of you, like in this audience, and to continue supporting your efforts if we can be helpful. I know my colleagues shared a link. If any of you have used the Almanac, we'd love to hear from you. If any of you have any follow-up questions or want to continue the conversation with any of us here today, would love to hear from you in the LinkedIn post that my colleagues shared. And I want to thank each of you here again. Thank you, Krizia, Kate, Randy, James, for sharing your use cases and for using the Almanac and for the work you do, and with the Almanac, but also without it, moving the needle and helping more people get the training opportunities that they deserve and access better opportunities. It was a pleasure to partner with each of you, and please continue counting on us and helping us improve as we go.